I want you to take a time and think about power in business. So what does it look like? Most of the times you find that it's billionaires list, it's a famous company, it's a huge office buildings with your name on it. In East Africa, most of the powerful businessmen are the ones that we don't even fully see. The one behind the deals, behind infrastructure, behind the industries that a country rely on every day. And that brings us on today's story. The story of Rostam Aziz, the one of the richest, most powerful, and most controversial businessman in East Africa. So this is Billionaires Africa, so welcome. And today's story, we're not just talking about money. We're talking about power, strategy, timing, and influence. And today's story is a little bit different from the normal ones. Let's call it Started from Nothing story. To understand Rostam Aziz, you have to start before he was even born. He came from a long-established Tanzanian business family with a deep root in trade, agriculture, and commerce. He didn't grow up learning how to apply for jobs. He grew up learning how the deals works, how money moves, how business grows, and how relationships build wealth. So that's very important because sometimes wealth is not built by one generation. Sometimes it's built like a relay race. One generation starts it, another generation runs faster. Another generation builds an empire. So Rostam Aziz, he was a generation that scaled everything. He studied economics in the UK and came back to Tanzania and joined the family business. Now this part is very important and I want you to pay attention. Because billionaires, they don't become rich when we hear their name first. They become rich from 10 to 15 years before we even know them. When they are learning how markets works, understanding the industry, building connections, and understanding how money really moves. And that was his training period. He wasn't just working. He was learning how to think like a businessman. And soon he made a move that changed everything. If there is a one decision that Rostam Aziz made that made him extremely rich, was telecommunication. He became a major shareholder in Vodacom Tanzania. And you have to understand something very important here. Telecom companies are not just companies. They become infrastructure. Once millions of people use your network, every call makes money, every SMS makes money, every mobile payment makes money, and every new customer increases your value. So telecom is not just a business. Telecom is a system people demand on every single day. And Rostam Aziz entered a telecommunication company in a very perfect time, when mobile phones were exploding across Africa. This is one of the biggest lessons from history. He didn't just invest in business. He invested in industries that were about to become essential. And now this is where most of people, they become rich and stop. But he didn't stop. He moved into mining, energy, gas, logistics, media, real estate, agriculture, and aviation. And now that may look very random to you, but no, not at all. It's not random. If you look carefully, all his business are connected to the system that country needs to function on. For example, communication, energy, transport, natural resources, and information. And this is very important to understand. Sometimes businessmen build brands and others build systems. And people who build systems are the ones who mostly become very powerful. Another powerful move that he made was selling parts of his shares in the right time. Here is something most of people they don't understand. Being rich on paper is one thing, but selling shares and turn them into cash is on another level. And when he sold his part of telecom stakes, he made hundreds of millions of dollars. And what did he do with that money? He didn't retire. He used that money to enter a new industry and expand his empire even more. This is how empire grows. You build one big success and you use that success to finance a next success. And in his recent years, he moved into gas and mining, especially through companies like Taifa Gas and Taifa Mining. And this shows something very interesting. He moved from digital infrastructure, which is telecom, to physical infrastructure, which is energy, gas, and mining. And that's a very strategic move because energy and resources are the things that country always need. Well, phone can change, apps can change, technology can change, but countries always need energy, fuel, minerals, transport, and infrastructure. And that's where a long-term power often sits. And then came one of the most surprising moves of his career. He moved into media, acquiring a major stake in National Media Group. And now this is where the business becomes an influence. Because media is not just a business, media controls information, public opinions, narratives, reputation, and political conversations. So whenever a businessman buys a media, people always ask that, is this just a business or this is an influence? And that question, that's what makes Rostam Aziz the most fascinating and controversial figure. If we summarize his success, it becomes a few key things, which are timing. He entered industries at the right time. Diversification. He didn't depend on one business. A scale. He didn't think small. Strategic sector. He focused on infrastructure and essential industries. Political understanding. He understood how business and politics interact. And whether you like it or not, in many countries, business and politics are closely connected. And now you can talk about Rostam Aziz without talking about controversy. His name has appeared in political debates, corruption allegation, offshore companies discussions, power and influence conversations, and he denied the wrongdoings. But his reputation has been always complicated. This is why his story is not such a simple story. This is a rich man's story, and a rich man's story is a powerful story, and a powerful story is always complicated. So what does this story really teach us? In real world, wealth is often built by the followings: positioning, timing, networking, big decision, strategic industries, and a long-term thinking. He didn't invent something like a tech founder. He didn't become famous like a celebrity entrepreneur. He built wealth by placing himself where money, infrastructure, and power were going next. And that's a very different kind of intelligence. So in the end, Rostam Aziz is not just a businessman. He's a strategist, a deal maker, an empire builder, and one of the most influential businessmen East Africa has ever produced. And his story shows us that wealth is not always loud. It's not always public. It's not always simple, but is very often built by people who understand things better than anyone else. Where power is going next. I'm Mariam Keza. with Billionaires Africa. I'll see you in the next one.